Hello everyone, we will study the pelvic wall. The bones of the pelvic wall is composed from the hip bones, two hip bones on the left and right, and also from the sacrum with coccyx. The two hip bones, this and this, forms the lateral wall and also anterior wall of the pelvis, while the sacrum it will form the posterior wall. Sacrum with coccyx form the posterior wall of the pelvis. The hip bones articulate posteriorly at the sacroiliac joints with the sacrum, while anteriorly it articulates at the pubic symphysis. So these bones of the pelvis. While the pelvic divisions, the pelvic is divisions into a true pelvis and false pelvis. Here it's false pelvis, while here it's a true pelvis. The pelvic brim that bounded anteriorly by the pubic symphysis and laterally by the iliopectineal line and posteriorly by the sacral promontory. This wall divisions the pelvis into false pelvis superiorly and the true pelvis inferiorly. The false pelvis. This false pelvis, it's bounded posteriorly by the lumbar vertebrae, laterally by the iliac fossa with iliacus muscle, and anteriorly it's bounded by anterior abdominal wall or lower part, especially or specifically lower part of the anterior abdominal wall. So this false pelvis, while the true pelvis, it has the pelvic inlet, same the pelvic brim. So the pelvic brim is also called pelvic inlet, and it has pelvic outlet. This pelvic outlet that it's bounded by the tip of the coccyx and the ischial tuberosity with a pubic arc. Also, there are pelvic cavity that located between the pelvic inlet. Here, it's pelvic cavity located between the pelvic inlet and the pelvic outlet, and it has the contents of the pelvis. Pelvic diaphragm. What meaning of the pelvic diaphragm? The pelvic diaphragm and the pelvis is composed from two muscles. The first muscle, levator's ani muscle. In this figure, the levator's ani muscle that composed from many fibers. And this figure show with different or variable colors. And this coccygeus muscle with a blue color. So the diaphragm is composed from levator's ani muscle and coccygeus muscle. The origin of the first muscle, levator's ani muscle, it arises from, firstly, from the body of the pubic tendinous arc that arises from the fascia that covers obturator internus muscle, and also arises from the ischial spine. And this insertion of this muscle is variable. Why? Because there are many difference of this muscle, many different fibers of this muscle. The first fiber is called anterior fiber, and the intermediate fiber and last fiber is called posterior fiber or called iliococcygeus fiber. So look to this figure. The anterior fiber that arises from the body of the pubic, it inserted into perineal body. What meaning of perineal body? Perineal body is collections of fibrous tissue that located anterior to the rectum. This opening of the rectum. So it's located anterior to the rectum. Have insertions of the anterior fibers of the levator's ani muscle. Also, this anterior fiber form levator prostates and sphincter of vagina. The intermediate fibers, it composed from two fibers, puborectalis, that insertions to the rectum and forms an rectal sphincter around the junctions between the anal canal and the rectum, while the pubococcygeus, this inserted into anococcygeal body. What meaning of anococcygeal body? Anococcygeal body is also same the perineal body, collections of fibrous tissue, but this is located behind the rectum, while the perineal body is located anterior to the rectum. So this pubococcygeus muscle inserted to this body. And the last fibers is called posterior fiber or iliococcygeus fiber. It also inserted to the anococcygeal body. So this fiber forms the levator's ani muscle. The nerve supply of this fibers from the pudendal nerve and fourth sacral nerve. Action of this muscle provide resistance to the intrapelvic pressures during cupping and straining. So during cupping and straining, the intrapelvic pressure will increase and rising. So this provide resistance to this rising in the pressure, and also support and maintain the structures in as positions in the pelvis. The coccygeus muscle, this coccygeus muscle with the blue color, arises from the ischial spine. This coccygeus muscle, it arises from the ischial spine and inserted into sacrum. The nerve supply of the coccygeus muscle is fourth and fifth the sacral nerves. Action of this muscle is assist the levator's ani muscle. Assist, provide assistance to the levator's ani muscle for support the structures. This diaphragm is incomplete anteriorly. Why? Because it allows passage of the urethra and the vagina in the female, and only urethra in the male. In this picture show the perineal body, that is collection of fibrous tissue located anterior to the rectum, hair rectum, and the anococcygeal body is located posterior to the rectum between the tip of the coccyx and the rectum. Thank you for listening. Any question, write in the comments.